Good evening. If anyone plans on speaking tonight, if you want to just sign in like the people over here are doing in line, but before we start the meeting, we're going to stand and say the pledge. Thank you. Tonight is Tuesday, May 16th. You're here for the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. In the event of an emergency or fire, there are exit signs throughout the building and in this room. Please follow them throughout Town Hall. Upon exiting the room, main exits are located to the front and the rear of the building. Do not use the elevator in the event of an emergency. This meeting is being recorded and will stream live online. If you don't want to wait to hear the decision on any given item, you can always call the town clerk's office tomorrow after 9 a.m. to hear the decision on any of the agenda items. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, June 13th at 6:30 here in this room. We will start by a calling of the roll.
Chairwoman Nichols.
Present.
Member Schubert. Member Phillips.
Present.
Member Bray. Present. And Member Parker.
Thank you. In addition to the Zoning Board of Appeals, today we have with us Daniel Latowski, who is the Zoning Enforcement Officer. We also have Sam Alba joining us from the Town Attorney's Office. First on the agenda is an approval of last month's minutes. Do I have a motion? Move to approve. Any opposition? Hearing none, that is granted 5-0. We do have on the agenda 9 items. I believe some may have been adjourned, but we are going to go a little out of order tonight and start with number 9 on the agenda, 3105-3135 Niagara Falls Boulevard. If the petitioner could come forward. And for all petitioners, just please make sure you sign in, state your name and address for the record.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, and rest of the board. Thank you. Sorry, a little out of breath. Art Piers with Wegmans Food Markets, here for the open area development administrative appeal request. As you may or may not know, we're in the process of seeking a subdivision of the entire parcel into 6 parcels. That would include the 3. Well, we have 3 right now. Existing is the SFCU at the very top left there. That's the credit union. Then we have a green is the next is a Chase Bank, which is currently under review by the planning department, very advanced in their review process. Then we will have another third one, which is there's no structure there now or no plans right now for the yellow. And then last but not least, as far as direct frontage, as far as the out parcels at the bottom left, we have the Northwest Bank. So there would be those 4 parcels, and then we'd have the Wegmans and then the Kohl's parcels. Now, if you could see with the colors there, and then the remaining white would be the Wegmans. So with the southern access road there to the overall development, you can see that's white too. So that would be Wegmans frontage. So here again, the 2 existing out parcels, the future 2 in the middle, with Chase being under review, and then the yellow future. And then Wegmans, we have all of those parcels that have frontage technically. It's the Kohl's that would not have frontage on a public roadway. So therefore, we're into an open area development appeal request. Now, as far as the subdivision, the purpose for that is an industry best practices when you have a landowner, and then you have tenants. It's best practices to have tax parcels, which allows a more efficient flow of payment of funds by the tenants directly to the town, and it certainly helps Wegmans and any landlord administer their leases through the payments. That's the sum total, very straightforward. And firstly, coming back real quickly, thank you for allowing it to be first on the meeting coming from the April 16th. Appreciate it greatly. Any questions? I'll be glad to address at this time.
Any questions from the board? Okay, hearing none. Do we have anyone here from the audience to speak on this petition? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the public hearing at this time. Do we have a motion from the board?
Can we get a seeker determination?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any motions with respect to the negative declaration that is displayed on the screen right now and we are all reviewing and have reviewed? A motion, Ron? I'll second. Anyone in opposition to approving the negative declaration? Hearing nothing, that would be approved 5-0. And then, Mr. Bray, did you have a motion with respect to the petition?
Motion for approval.
Ron, second. Any opposition? Hearing none, that is granted 5-0.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair, as well as compliments to all your planning staff on this and all the other applications we're working through on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda would be number 1, which is 1220 New Road.
Good evening. I'm Marie Evans, owner of 1220 New Road. This is, I believe, our 14th renewal for a special use permit for auxiliary housing. It's an in-law apartment for my parents. They are 91 and 94 years old, and everything is still the same as it's been since 1994.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions from the board?
Nope.
Anyone from the audience to speak on this petition? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the public hearing.
Move to approve.
We have a motion from Mr. Schubert. Second. Do we have any opposition? And is that for 2 years?
It is.
Okay. Opposition to that motion. The motion is granted 5-0.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is number 2, 555 Casey Road. I believe that item has been withdrawn. So we will move on to number 3 on the agenda, 41 Meadowview Lane. This is a continuation of an application from last month.
How you doing?
Hi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Croze with Lepus Mathias, and I represent petitioner Lino Alveri. I apologize I was not here last month, but I believe the only outstanding questions were regarding Mr. Alveri's use. 2 items that did come up were whether or not his personal commercial business was being operated out of the premises, as well as what his intended use was. One of the things I would like to provide, and Mr. Alveri will speak on behalf of himself as well, he did get several letters from his neighbors as well as other clients where some of his materials and his equipment is stored, which is not on the premises. But if there are any questions directly for him about his intended use for the project, he's welcome to answer them.
Okay, I didn't receive any of the letters that you're referencing. Did anyone else?
They were delivered today, so I'm happy to give them to you.
Okay, so we would probably need time to look at those.
Of course.
You can bring them up.
Makes more sense.
Okay, so obviously it's gonna take us a few minutes to go through that, because we're just
Certainly.
receiving that information right now. But maybe we could have the board ask questions while we're waiting for that. I know there were some outstanding questions, if anyone wants to jump in. If not, I will. So obviously, we had the public hearing at the last meeting, and there were numerous neighbors who had pictures and did show evidence that there was heavy equipment on the property. So I guess, is the contention now that that will no longer be happening, or that never happened?
What heavy equipment was on my property?
So we had pictures at the last, were you here at the last?
No.
Okay, so at the last meeting, there were members of the audience who spoke at the public hearing that had pictures of, I think it was a Bobcat.
Larger trucks.
My understanding from speaking with Laura from after that meeting was that that was not actually at his site. However, I could be mistaken, and I had not.
Did you
seen
have
those
the
photos.
pictures?
Well, I can tell you that the photographs I saw were the residents at issue
At the premises, though.
at the premises. And that location is listed as is where the business is located. So if you're telling us that the equipment, the trucks, all of that, materials are going to be stored at another, and I don't know if these letters speak to it, what's the location they're being stored at?
Anytime I've had any heavy equipment at my house was to do work at the house. The area that the building would be erected at, I already cleared it. I'd say it's 80% cleared, so that's what the Bobcat would be there for. But I don't keep the Bobcat at my house, or any of my heavy equipment is normally left on site. And they're actually been on site for 2 years now. I have a couple of the properties, I can give you the addresses. One of the letters shows where I keep my trucks, my trailers, my Bobcat. I wouldn't want a Bobcat at my house.
Thomas, can
I'm
you
not-
display
Address.
where the person is that's writing this letter? Can you show the address line?
Okay, so just for the record, we're looking at letters submitted just today that we are reading for the very first time. Is everyone ready to go on to the next one?
So the truck, when I drove by to see the site, I did see several pickup trucks. Those
I
are
have pickup
first-
trucks in my driveway, yeah.
with those-
Well, one is an SUV, one is a pickup truck.
And those would be then garaged if you build this,
Yeah, I could easily put them in the garage. I was gonna use the garage for my summer cars, and my wife has extensive amounts of patio furniture that she stores in a Florida room that's on the back of the house, which is semi-sealed. And she would like to get it out of there in the wintertime. So we had some damage during the storm in the back from the furniture had to be tossed. But
Okay, next letter.
This is the first one.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then, just so we're clear, what is the business address for your business?
I use my billing address at the house. I do all my clerical work from home. Or I should say my wife does it for me.
And where do you store all these?
All the equipment is at behind Cleve Hill Auto, which is like a mile from here on Beach in Cleveland. It's parked in the back, it's coned off. All the heavy equipment, wheel loaders, push boxes for parking lots are at Benderson Development Properties. I can give you those addresses if you wanted them.
Well, I was hoping you were gonna have them, because this is exactly what we talked about at the last meeting, so.
Okay.
No, our apologies, that was not relayed to me from Laura, so that's partially my fault for missing last month.
Okay,
the impression we definitely got as a board at the last meeting was that there was business being conducted. The use was not in conformance with the zoning district.
And our understanding is that it's not happening, and I mean, certainly he can attest to that.
Some of the members of the public had brought forth Facebook postings showing what were clearly commercial
There's
vehicles.
no posting on Facebook of my house with my equipment at my house.
I would beg to differ, having been here last month and having seen it. Do you know what we're talking about,
I
or
have
did
no
you
clue.
see what was produced by the public?
No, nobody showed me anything.
anything else?
Are those images available anywhere?
Do we have those still?
They're in the paper file, which is the first one.
Well, does
Certainly,
anyone,
if there are more questions outstanding, I believe, would be happy to adjourn it to have those answered to you.
I think that might be a good idea, just because it doesn't sound like there was a lot of communication between the person who appeared at the last meeting and now you and your client. So, perhaps if you're requesting an adjournment, that is something that we would entertain.
mean, if it would make.
I think
certainly
that,
it would
I
make
think
life
that
easier,
would
absolutely.
probably help
Could those
clear up.
pictures be made available to us?
Yeah,
They have, they're-
yeah,
That'd be great.
okay. And just before we adjourn, so I can think about this for the next month. So if we were to grant your request but made a condition that there be absolutely no commercial equipment stored on the property or in the garage, would that be something that you could live with?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll even give you access to my cameras.
Okay. All right, well then, given what we've heard today, I would.
Before you adjourn, Madam Chairperson, if you could open it up to the audience to offer testimony?
Oh, okay, because we had closed the public
Oh,
hearing.
I'm sorry, I didn't know the hearing was closed.
We had closed it at the last hearing. But is anyone here to speak on this petition today? Did either of you speak at the last hearing? Okay. Normally, we would not want to hear the same thing over because it's redundant and it's available online for you to view. But since we now have Mr. Oliveri here with his counsel, I will see, does anyone else want to open the public hearing? Do I have to move to do that?
Yes.
All right, I will move to reopen the public hearing. Mr. Schubert seconds. Any opposition? No opposition. So I will ask whoever is here from the audience to come forward and briefly summarize what you said the last meeting or bring forth new evidence.
Hi, my name is Nancy Sir. I live at 8 Auden Court. I was the one with most of the pictures last time. I didn't bring them this time because I thought I didn't need to. But yes, I brought the pictures. I took them off Facebook. I showed them to you. I just have a few other questions. How many structures is someone allowed to have on a property in the town of Amherst?
They can have multiple structures. They are limited to 75% of the principal dwelling, including the attached garage. So an infinite amount, but it is capped at 75% of the size of the principal dwelling.
Okay, because there's a detached garage, a shed, and now this shed of 30 by 40 shed is the next. So there's three structures. This will be the third from the frame of the house.
Right.
Okay?
That's what we're talking about. They're requesting to have,
Another structure.
well, not another structure, but more square footage than what is allowable for all of the total of
Right.
the structures.
Right.
You can have 1,200, and for this building, based on the size of the house, you can have 1,254 total square feet, which I guess could be in 7 different structures, as long as it is capped at that number of square feet.
But the size of the two structures that are there aren't, the numbers aren't there with the detached structures.
That would be included in what he's asking for.
But it says proposed shed 30 by 40, correct?
That's included in what he's asking us, which is to go above and beyond what the code allows.
Okay,
So we have to make a decision whether or not we would grant that request.
okay. And then I guess next time, when we come back, I'll bring back those pictures. I'm not,
I think we have them, we just
Okay.
don't have them physically right here. So
Okay.
we will share those with the petitioner.
and then I also, if this does happen, and let's say in 6 months, there's trucks and stuff in the back, what happens then?
Call the building department.
So the petitioner would be in violation of the zoning ordinance. Actually, 7-1-12A of our zoning ordinance prohibits commercial vehicles in a residential district. So the building commissioner could then issue a violation notice and place the petitioner in court and have the judge order the removal and/or impose a fine and/or jail time.
Okay, okay, thank you so much.
My name's excuse me. My name's Elvita Aletta. I live on the property that borders the back of this property with my husband, and Mrs. Sir asked the question that I had too. How is the commercial, the limitation of commercial vehicles not being on the property going to be maintained? So she asked my question. I just wanted to be on the record that I'm opposed to this. I think of the values of the properties around it will be, well, go down. And I also believe that, I just can't believe that the property owner is, well, nothing less than disingenuous in his intentions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm David Gunther, a neighbor of Mr. Oliveri. I've lived in my house, 2 Auden Court, for 39 years. My main concern was the size of the structure at 1,200 square feet plus whatever else he has there. It seems to exceed what's allowed at 1,254 square feet. So I don't know if he would have to tear down a smaller shed that he has there, sort of equalize the square footage. That's my main concern. The other concern was having commercial vehicles parked in that shed. If that can be prohibited, I'd have no problem with the shed itself being built. If it's brought down to the 1,254 square feet somehow, or if you give a variance anyways. That's my main concern, those 2 things.
Thank you. Is anyone else here to speak on this? I think maybe we'll leave the public hearing open. I don't think we could today, because I think we have to let him see the photos. Can the petitioner come back forward and his attorney?
We're pretty close to where we.
I just thought of 2 more questions, though. Okay, I just have two questions that were just brought up from what the last speaker said. Is there any chance you would take any of these other structures down?
I don't know what's involved. I'd have to look and see what's involved in taking the
So you
shed
could bring
down.
it down closer to what's allowable under the code?
The shed would probably be the easiest to take down because the other, the 2-car garage, both which were there when we bought the house, the 2-car garage is like a framed like a home. It's got a furnace in it and everything. The other one is just your standard shed. It'd probably be easier to take that down. I don't know what's involved with that because I don't do that kind of stuff, but I would consider it, sure.
Okay, and at the last meeting, I know you weren't here, but someone did bring up, what if there was to be a fire in that proposed shed? How would a fire truck get back
The fire
there?
truck can drive right back there.
Well, I can only see like what is on this screen, right?
They're
So-
on the,
So is there gonna be like a driveway that goes all the way back?
yeah, yeah. There's concrete right on the right side of the driveway.
Okay, so there already
Right to,
is.
the concrete goes right to the back of the
Along the
additional
northern
2-car
property
garage.
line.
Yeah, it stops at the very back now, but, I mean, because the building has to be put on a slab anyways, they can't just put it on the ground. So it would have to go back there.
Right, but so there's gonna be like a drive lane that goes
Yeah.
past, like, that says garage, detached garage,
Yes.
shed, other building?
Yeah, and it would be in line with the front one, so it's not, just scattered.
Okay. Okay. I'll move to adjourn so that we can give the petitioner time to see the photos that we were provided at the last meeting.
And what would that accomplish?
So he can respond, because he hasn't seen them. He didn't see any of what was presented at the last meeting.
Okay.
If the
Well,
outstanding.
we can discuss it if you don't want to adjourn
I
it.
mean, clearly, they showed 2 pickup trucks, 2 blades on the ground, and they haven't been there since.
Yeah, they're pickup trucks.
There are 2 black pickup trucks in front of them with 2
Yeah.
plow blades, and they haven't been there since.
Well, if they're not asking for an adjournment, then maybe we don't need to adjourn it. Do you want us to vote tonight, or would you like?
If it's conditioned upon Mr. Oliveri not keeping any of his commercial vehicles there, then certainly he'd be happy to consider that today.
Yeah, I do. In the wintertime, I do snow plowing, so I leave 1 a.m. in the morning from my house. So the plow would be on my truck. And the other truck that's there with the plow is a backup in the event I have a failure in the middle of the night. I can go home, grab it, and go. All my other trucks, you could leave here and go down the street and see them.
Okay.
And the trailers are there. They're right behind Cleve Hill Auto. They're there all the time. The trailers are there all the time.
Okay.
Certainly, if the board would like to have a response about those photos, we'd be happy to give it at a later date, but if it's unnecessary, we're happy to move forward with it.
Okay, well then, let's discuss as a board.
I would be more interested in seeing that little shed come down, the tiny one that we're talking about.
Is it really going to make that big of a difference,
What's the
though?
square footage of the shed?
I want to say it's 12 by 12. It's your typical
Yeah.
homeowner shed.
Less clutter.
Okay, so does anybody else want to move forward today on the board, or?
I'm happy to move forward.
Okay.
The hearing from last month has been available online for a month.
Okay. All right, well then, I will not move to adjourn. I will draw that motion. I will close the public hearing, and then I will leave it up to the board to have a discussion before, or entertain a motion if someone has one.
If that smaller shed came down, would that be, Dan, would we be more in compliance?
It'll certainly be less square footage. If it's 12 by 12, it's 144 square feet less. I think it's important if you wish to consider, if you wish to cite section 7-1-12, that the petitioner must adhere to that section of our zoning ordinance which prohibits commercial vehicles, then you're conditioning that he acknowledges that he will observe that.
Anyone, motion? You want to go forward, Ron?
I know I did.
I would make the motion that it would be approved on the condition that it meets the zoning ordinance in terms of no businesses being operated out of it, the 7-1-12A. And also that the smaller shed comes down so that you're more in compliance with the square footage.
I would second that.
Just to be clear, I don't know that it says that you can't operate the business out of it. It's no commercial
Yeah.
vehicles stored.
So
You can't operate a business.
a business would not be permitted unless it met either a type 1 or a type 2 form of business pursuant to our zoning ordinance, and the petitioner would have to identify which form of business he's seeking to establish there. Thomas, would you bring up the resolution so if they do wish to consider it, they could run through the mandatory tests?
Okay, so do we have a second? Mr. Schubert seconded. I think we should run through the test before we vote. So, Ms. Parker, would you like to run through it since it's your motion?
First is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties would be the condition that there's compliance with that section 7-1-12A in the zoning code, not allowing commercial vehicles on the property, would therefore ameliorate that and keep it in the character. Whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method. We did reduce the area variance, the amount of the variance, by having the extra shed removed. Whether the requested variance is substantial, again, it is fairly large, but with the removal of the shed, it brings it more in compliance. Whether it will have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood, it's a shed, I don't see, or a garage would not have a significant environmental impact, and whether it was self-created. And it is self-created, but that can't be the only reason. So with that.
Okay. Maybe we should run through the roll on that one.
Chairwoman Nichols? Sorry, hold on one second. Chairwoman Nichols?
Approve.
Member Schubert? Member Phillips?
Oppose.
Member Bray? And Member Parker?
Approve with the conditions as noted.
That is a 3-2 vote with the conditions as stated. The request is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next on the agenda is item number 490 Pierce Drive.
Hi, my name is Mike Beecham. We live at 90 Pierce, and we're here for an area variance. Okay, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present this situation. We would like to fence in our side yard, in yellow there, with a 6-foot fence, but zoning currently limits us to a 3-foot fence because if it's a corner lot. Because of the way the house is sitting on the property, we have a very small backyard. We would like to be able to fence in the side yard for the additional space for grandchildren and pets to play in a secure area. We have discussed this with our neighbors and do not feel that this would impact the neighborhood in any adverse way. Our address is on Pierce Drive, and the front of the home is very obviously on Pierce. I have pictures if you want to see the front of the house and the side of the house.
Thank you.
So that's the front of the house. Okay, we're the corner lot. Okay, so it's clearly in our minds, that's our front, and that's Pierce Drive. Now, if you put up number 2, this is on Broncroft. This is the side of our house. This is a side that we want to fence in and extend our backyard and have more room for the family and grandchildren and pets. We'll be working closely with a professional fence company and get their recommendations on how to put up the fence and how close we can go to different items, that type of thing. So that's it.
Okay. So do you know how close to, like, where are you envisioning this fence coming out to in this picture?
Well, we wanted to try to go to our property boundaries, which is right before the sidewalk. And we'd go to the front of the house, coming almost to the sidewalk, and then back to where the big tree is, and then meet with the old fence back there. We'll actually replace the old fence too. So it's going to, and what I don't know is there a limitation to how close we can go to the sidewalk? What's reasonable, and that's what we would talk to the fence company about, or you can address it right now. I mean, we're willing to work with everybody.
Just for clarity, if this were not considered the front yard, which technically it is because the statute defines the front yard as the narrowest dimension on the lot, so technically the side street is the front yard. If it were not considered the front yard, we would call it an exterior side yard, and the fence would have to be minimally 10 feet away based on the most recent revision to fences within exterior side yards. So if we did not call it a front yard, it would have to be 10 feet away minimally.
10 feet away from where?
From your property line. So if
Okay.
if you look at your survey, you own 40 feet of land from.
Yes.
So you could have a fence 30 feet long.
Okay.
Produced from the house.
Okay.
So I guess, is that something that you could live with, having
Yes,
the fence?
I think we can live with that. You have a question? What, we have a tree, well, we have a tree that's 12 feet away. So.
The tree is actually 12 feet.
Thanks, hon.
And 10 feet would be difficult to do.
So are you trying to put the tree in the fence or out of the fence?
Probably in the fence, if we can. So I guess, would it be 8 or 6 feet? Would that be okay?
It's before the board's consideration if they want to put limitations. Right now, you're asking for your fence to be 0 feet away.
Yeah.
We're assuming that's fairly close to the sidewalk.
Right.
So we'll leave it to the board to offer any limitation they wish to impose.
I actually have a question. if this were not the front, if this were the side, then 10 feet would be fine and he wouldn't be here.
Correct.
So the only reason he's here now, if we say 10 feet, the only reason he's here is because it's
It's how the statute's written,
when
unfortunately.
the statute's written. But now we have another issue, and that is the tree.
Yes.
So
We don't want to lose the tree. Would it be possible to do a condition that says, instead of a number of feet, we just say that right outside the tree, or right past the tree? I don't know if that's legal, because
Practicable.
I feel like it's almost premature, like this petition's premature.
in what sense?
I would feel better issuing a decision or making a decision on something when I actually see, this is the plan, this is where we plan to put it. So I know that if it's coming on this side of the tree, because I can't tell, is it 5 feet, is it 10 feet? So I can tell you that I personally don't feel comfortable ruling on something I don't really, it hasn't come into being yet.
Well, we're hearing that it's 12 feet from what, the property line?
Yes.
Okay,
Is
so,
that the center of the tree, or the front of the tree, or the
yeah,
back
why
of the
don't you
tree?
come up?
The tree
Why don't
looks
you
like
come
it's
up
about
and state your
3
name and
feet
address?
wide.
Andrea Beecham, 90 Pierce Drive.
They know.
She asked me to state it.
Big tree.
And the tree is 12 feet from the sidewalk. I measured it myself.
From the side of it?
From the side of the tree to the sidewalk.
But where's the property line?
We believe the property line is on the.
It's 40 feet from your house.
Right.
Which we believe is like right.
Very
on the
close to
road.
the sidewalk.
Very close to the
I
sidewalk.
guess you really would need to see a survey or something showing exactly where the tree is.
The surveys.
No, but exactly where the tree is, where the tree is.
What we need to see is where your property line is relative to the sidewalk
Tree.
and the tree. That doesn't show the tree or the
No,
sidewalk.
but that's right on the sidewalk. I know you can't see it, I'm sorry.
Property line usually isn't right on the sidewalk, though.
The problem is, we don't want to put a number on it, locking you into something, and then a fence
Yeah.
company come out and be like,
Okay.
oh, we can't do this, we can't abide by that.
I think we should adjourn it and have them come back next month after they work with a fence vendor. You also have fence measure.
But what we don't know is that then a variance of 5 feet
Yeah, I think
or
we probably need to say
15
a
or 30?
A specific distance.
I did measure, and 6 feet beyond the tree would, part of the problem is there's roots going on around the tree, so we can't go 1 foot or 2.
Right.
Well, let's have like the fence company, you hire a fence company and then tell you and then come back to us for the variance.
So is that something that's doable if we end up dragging fence
It
companies?
sounds
out?
like we're trying to help you to save this tree and give you a fence. But we would just need a little bit more information from a fence company.
So our goal here is to put it somewhere in between the tree and the property line, and that sounds doable.
And don't
to you?
construct it.
You just want to see the plan.
You just
Yeah.
wanna see the
Okay.
plan, so that when you do the variance, we have something more specific.
Yes.
If I could offer a recommendation, grab a tape measure. You know that your property line's 40 feet from the house corner. Take that tape measure, walk past a point that you feel is reasonable beyond the tree, and measure that distance. Subtract it from 40 feet. Then we'll know where your fence will be from the property line.
Okay. That's fair.
So would you be asking us for an adjournment then, so you could handle that? Okay. I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded. Any opposition? None. The motion to adjourn is granted 5-0, and we'll hopefully see you back next month.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, was there anyone here from the audience to speak on that petition?
Our neighbors are here.
Oh. Will they come back next month?
They just came this, I don't wanna speak on their behalf, but
They just left. Oh, I thought it was other neighbors. Okay. Yeah, but they're here now. So do I
Still
have to-
open if you wanna.
Do I have to reopen since we just adjourned, or can I do the public hearing? Sam, I'm looking at you. But we can still hold the public hearing on that? Yeah. Okay. Is there anyone here from the audience to speak on this petition? Come forward, state your name and address, and sign in.
Good evening. I'm Pauline Bazinski. I live directly across the street from 90 Pierce. I am at 89 Pierce Drive. I've been living across from the Beechams for, 3 years? We moved in around the same time. I live with my husband. So I guess I have a couple of questions. I've been a town of Amherst resident my whole life, but only the homeowner for 3 years. So why is it because of a corner lot you are limited to a 3-foot height fence that close to the property
Can we go
line?
to the petitioner's picture showing? So the primary concern is visibility. So that the neighbor immediately next door,
Yes.
if we were to provide a 6-foot-high fence all the way out to the sidewalk, they would have an inability to safely see children or pedestrians on the sidewalk.
Okay.
So that's a primary reason why we limit heights of fencing in proximity to adjacent properties.
Okay. My second question is based off your definition of why their side is deemed the front yard. Why would the house have been constructed in the manner of facing their actual street address if the front yard is Broncroft?
It's based on a change in the statute. I can't explain why it was constructed in that fashion. The current statute states that the front shall be the narrowest lot dimension.
Okay, so I just want to state publicly, I am in favor of their taller privacy fence extended. Their backyard is very small. I've seen it myself, and they do have a dog. Their children bring over dogs frequently. They should be able to, have the space that I'm entitled to just because I'm not on a corner lot. I have a larger yard space, so they have the same amount of property roughly. I think they should have the same amount of yard space, but I also think they should have the privacy that I have of a surrounding privacy fence. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. Now you don't have to come next time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and we've already adjourned that item, so I'm going to close the public hearing on that unless anyone else is here to speak on that. I don't see anybody else coming forward, so we'll close the public hearing on 90 Pierce Drive. And we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 2354 Worley Drive.
Hello, my name is Victoria Mueller. I represent Mr. Brian Goldstein of Goldstein Greco, and we would like to erect that lovely sign. First and foremost, it's for our clients. We're a law firm, and many of our clients, are elderly, emotionally sometimes distraught. Our building is set back tremendously from Worley, as many of the buildings are with the widening of Worley. So anything to increase traffic safety and diminish driver distraction, which we have enough of these days with phones. Anyway, as you can see, the proposed install is 6 feet in, and I'm not sure if you already put the sign up, but I think the pictures really demonstrate, if one was to drive up and down Worley, it is apparent that other businesses have sought out variances. There are many businesses with their signs very close to the roadway. The overriding concern is traffic safety. Obviously, we want to let people know our firm is here. Like I said, we have clients disabled, elderly, and as of right now, without having a sign, it's rather cumbersome for them to come into our lot. Questions? I have a whole bunch of pictures that shows how setback it is. Oh, and thank you for letting me speak. I forgot to mention that.
Does anyone have questions from the board?
The other aspect of it is that you're supposed to have it be a ground sign and have the base of it be no less than 75% of the width of the sign, and this is less than that.
Correct.
To be amenable to having it be more in conformance with the being a ground sign.
I'm amenable to your suggestions. Having said that, working with Ulrich Signs, he gave me tremendous confidence. He's dealt with installs in Amherst, so he was crystal clear. I pretty aggressive on this, meaning I want this sign to last longer than my grandchildren. So in terms of battling 70-mile-hour winds, the construction of it has wood posts. It'll be in cement blocks in the ground. I understand what you're saying. I've looked at other signs, which I also have in my pictures, that are
Right. Most of the
built
signs in
like
the
this
pictures
also.
are more of the ground sign look, except for Stumps, it's probably grandfathered since that's been
Done your
there.
sign homework. Yes, I agree. And first and foremost it is crucial. We don't want this sign flying anywhere, and we know what the weather is like in Western New York, so I'm very conscious of that. Chris from Ulrich, the owner, was very confident because I drilled over, before I even knew I had to present here, I said, I want a sturdy sign. I've experience in property management, so my father told me never do anything halfway. It is paramount that this fixture is rock solid and not just put in. So,
On a couple of your photos, you have a tape measure on the ground. Am I right to presume that that's to just demonstrate where placement would be?
yes. Yeah, I didn't have a note there. I figured that was, thank you for asking.
Yeah, I have less of a concern with the setback than with the design. I mean, the not being the
And
similar.
and due to longevity, I just want to make sure I understand.
It's what the code is requesting in this district, that it be a ground sign and not a pole sign.
I think with the plot of land, the aesthetics of the town, I'm a Amherst resident, and it seems like the bigger buildings have the sign that you're speaking of, and then there's some companies that go with the poster look.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, so is there any thinking that you would change it to be in conformity with the code as far as the ground sign versus the pole sign that you have proposed?
I mean, we'll do what you want us to do.
It sounds like no one has maybe an issue with the setback, just with.
Is it too high? Is that the issue? Maybe
Yeah.
trim it
The
down?
issue is, and if you were to look at the petitioner's illustration of the Ashton Potter sign, that's a sign that conforms. It's a ground sign. We require that 75% of the width of the sign be made up of the base, so that you don't have pole signs. So this does not meet the base requirement.
What's the rationale for that?
Aesthetics, nicer appearing sign. So some of the signs that the petitioners illustrated as examples are non-conforming. Some conform because they're truly ground signs. We feel that they're more aesthetically pleasing.
And I-
Amherst alarm, which the petitioner provided as an example, that conforms. It's correct.
And I'm all for aesthetics. I appreciate what you're saying. The Ashton sign with the organization, that building, it's a pretty massive building. Our house is more of a slim down, so I mean, I took a lot of thought into this. I went to Fast Signs, you know, they proposed something. I wasn't feeling confident about the durability, and just not to, you know, everyone to each his own type of thing, but, you know, I went to several vendors in looking for a sign maker that would blend in with the environment of Worley, as well as have long experience working with the town, and making something that fit in what I thought was appropriate, what we thought, excuse me, and elevates the whole area.
I think the problem is just if we say, yeah, okay, you can have this pole sign, then like everyone's gonna, everyone could theoretically come in and say, well, who cares what the code says? That person's got a pole sign, I want a pole sign. So it's just, there's a reason that the code is written that way. We didn't write it, but our job is to.
But I mean, the issue is the aesthetics. I don't have an issue with the aesthetics of this particular sign either. You know what I mean? When you look at, like, in the packet, something like stumps, which is, on wooden poles versus this, I think there's a tangible difference.
Yeah,
I do agree that it's an attractive sign. I'm not opposed to the sign per se. It's just that you're now asking, it's supposed to be 49.5 inches wide at the base, and it's going to be with 2 4-inch poles on either side. It's going to be 8 inches. And then we're getting into substantial.
Did you look at the cost of a regular base sign versus this? What was?
It's definitely going to be much higher. We're a small law firm.
So let me pose the question this way. If we were to say it had to be a base sign, would you go forward with this project or not?
I'm speaking for the partners and the attorneys, so I'm a cost-benefit analysis person, and I'm an honest person, so 50-50. I'm sorry, I don't want to say one way and go back on my word.
Can the posts be cut down to make this more compatible with the ordinance?
Well, I mean, there are alternatives that I don't believe the petitioner has explored. I mean, you could make a base, and Ulrich admittedly is a great sign company. They can provide alternatives to the petitioner. You could have a simple masonry base with a cultured stone applied to it to make it look like it's substantial. Our concern is that, we like ground signs. We think they're more aesthetically pleasing than a double posted sign such as this, and that's what the ordinance strives for consistency in ground signs. We do allow for a pole sign in certain instances, but our goal is to provide some uniformity in signs within our community, and that's why we insist that 75% of the sign width be the base.
If I could just add one more thing, and I fully agree, in looking at the signs down Worley, it is a relatively small plot of land, so I'm pretty, thinking about spacing and design and layout. I guess I was also looking through your eyes, meaning to have a more massive sign on this small area. And one could say, well, more attention the better to your building, but that's where we thought something elegant gets the job done. We didn't want to go bigger and put more stuff on it. I didn't think it was necessary. What's most important is that our clients see the name, because it was more that we thought about adding, but we thought less is more for that small area.
And I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I don't think anyone here has an issue with the sign itself. It's how it's affixing to the ground. So, I think if we adjourned, the bottom part of this where it's like everything from the sign face down, if Ulrichs could maybe give you some alternate ideas on, I think that it might be more palatable. But I don't think anyone's saying that the top portion, the sign portion, is what we're finding unacceptable.
Yeah, believe me, I don't want to adjourn another thing to next month, but I don't think that, for the record, you've given us enough alternatives that that request.
I mean, do you want
would
a
be
solid
successful.
base at the bottom? Is that what you're, I want to make sure.
Yes, that would be a ground sign.
I think Ulrich can provide you with some cost-effective alternatives, which could include a solid feature on the bottom. It might not necessarily have to be 49.5 inches wide. Maybe the zoning board would consider something less, but the idea is to get rid of the two goalposts holding up the sign in preference to a ground sign.
So it's the poles that are the issue.
Yes.
Even though there's other signs that,
Again, we recognize and we'll stipulate there are non-conforming signs in our community, and someday they will go away in preference to our design standard, which is a ground sign.
So would you like us to vote on this tonight, or would you like to adjourn to get some other alternatives from the sign company?
so if you vote on it and it's turned down, then we can't,
You could start over with the ground sign.
which I'm going to have to do anyhow.
So we could take these separately and vote on them today. If you're not asking for an adjournment, we'll just take them one at a time and vote on them. The two requests.
Thomas, can you pull up the resolution?
I'm
So you're seeking relief in two instances,
Right.
setback and then the dimensional requirement of the base.
I mean, my job is to work with you guys, because I'm always a fan of yours. In property management, again, I always say, come here, tell them, find out what the rules are and follow the rules. So by us going to Chris and saying, just give us a solid base, I will absolutely do that.
Yeah, you could withdraw your request for variance 2, reapply if you think that Ulrich cannot accommodate your needs, but the zoning board could entertain variance 1, which would allow you its location closer than 15 feet to your property line at the road. I mean, that's something you could offer, or to
And if
advance
you-
this further.
And if you redesign the base so that it's compliance, you wouldn't need to come back to us for the second.
Then I just present it to Tom? Or?
Yeah, you would simply, Tom would confirm with building that it meets the base requirements, and then you're
Okay.
free to go.
Okay.
And you don't even need to come back.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so then
I-
I'm hearing you were gonna withdraw the second request with respect to the base width, correct?
sorry, I should. Okay. I mean,
So then we are left with the first request with respect to the setback of the sign. So moving forward on just that request, do we have anyone here to speak on this from the audience? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're gonna close the public hearing. We've discussed this at length. Do we have a motion with respect to that one request? We have a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
And a second. Do we have any opposition? Hearing none, the first request with respect to the setback is granted 5-0, and you're all set.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If your sign complies, you go to Tom.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay,
I didn't sign in, should I?
yes, please. Next up on the agenda is item number 6, 1055 Youngs Road.
Good evening, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, 1055 Youngs Road LLC. Also with me is Paul Bliss from Bliss Development, Chris Ortloff from Bliss Development, and last but not least, Lily Bliss, I guess not necessarily with Bliss Development, but a senior at Penn State who's tagging along with her wonderful father this evening. We're here this evening in connection with what we think is a relatively straightforward matter. As you may recall, the project at 1055 Youngs Road, which consists of a 2-story senior housing building with 50 units, along with related site improvements, was reviewed very extensively. And actually, I believe it predates any of the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Ultimately, several years ago, that project received site plan approval from the Planning Board. The original developer decided to sell the project, and Mr. Bliss purchased it in the name of 1055 Youngs Road LLC. The project has been very successful to date. On the back portion, which is the southern side or the bottom of the aerial photograph on the right-hand side, there's an outdoor seating area. It's very popular. Why we're here is as a result of it being open last year, and of course, having a nice summer, hopefully we'll have again. It's very sunny there. And basically, residents that actually reside in the facility, that does include a meal plan, have asked that there be some coverage of that concrete patio. So what we're proposing is a detached is important, seasonal awning. There will be a frame that will stay year-round that requires a setback area variance from the southern property line. It's also important to note that there's a 6-foot high-quality fence located along the southern property boundary. Believe it or not, originally it was installed inadvertently based on some mistaken input with the nicer side facing in. Mr. Bliss was subsequently advised that that needed to be fixed, so he literally had to actually take that entire fence, have a company turn it around. So that's all done. So basically we're talking about an outdoor area behind a fence with an awning that's seasonal for the residents of the facility. Next slide. That's simply a copy of the awning plan. The dimensions are approximately, and I scaled this off from a PDF, 47 by 20. It looks at the peak heights about 10 to 11 feet. Again, you can see as that approaches the building. It's also important to note it does not cover the entire patio, but it does provide ample seating, so where literally someone could eat their breakfast, lunch, or dinner outside or use it for other events and gatherings at the facility, which is a nice feature. Next slide. So the third of those elevation plans prepared by Silvestri Architects is the southern elevation. And you can see that first floor dining area, and again, has a meal program, very good food. That's the area where there's a concrete patio that's there today, directly behind it, and we're proposing to install an awning on a seasonal basis that would cover a portion of that. Next slide. So obviously, in connection with any request for area variances, it's governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria set forth in New York State Town Law, Section 267B3B, which requires you as the zoning board to balance the benefits that will be received by the applicant if the requested relief is granted and weigh those against any resulting detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding neighborhood or community. In this instance, the benefits are clear. This is a nice amenity that can be provided to the senior residents. It will be very well utilized. The concrete patio is actually very well utilized. I looked at the aerial imagery from last year, and there was actually people sitting out there in the sun, so it'll be a nice amenity. I don't think there's any detriments whatsoever. Again, a detached seasonal awning located behind a fence. The 5 criteria, whether the granting the requested relief will result in undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. The answer to that criteria is no. Whether or not there are feasible alternatives to the requested relief that would eliminate the need for the requested variance. The answer is no. This is the only location that we can have that seasonal awning. Third criteria is whether or not it's substantial. And as this board is very well aware, the key inquiry in connection with criteria number 3 is whether there'll be any harm. There will absolutely be no harm whatsoever. The 4th criteria, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. This is clearly as day as a type 2 action pursuant to seeker, and as such categorically will not result in any adverse impacts whatsoever. And then the final criteria is whether or not the alleged difficulty is self-created. Mr. Bliss obviously has developed numerous projects in the town of Amherst and communities in Western New York. We certainly have knowledge of the zoning code, so we would admit for the record it is a self-created hardship, but as you're aware, the statute says that cannot be the sole basis for your decision. So with that being said, applying the overall balancing test, the benefits versus the detriments, and 4 of the 5 criteria, we think you have more than ample justification for the granting of the requested relief. If you have any questions, we would certainly, of course, welcome the opportunity to address them. Thank you.
Any questions?
I had a question, starting at the beginning. What did you say about the fence? And it was the...
So the fence was originally installed inadvertently or mistakenly based on some input was received. In Amherst, if you're going to install a fence on a property line, the nicer side has to face out.
When did that happen?
Paul, when was that? 2
that's
years
for
ago,
a-
Dan?
It was 2 years ago, and we've been in touch with Mr. Woolcott.
The landscaping provisions require that for commercial developments. This would not apply to a residential, single-family home.
And the good news is it was taken care of.
Okay, thank you. I think it's
Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none. I'll ask if there's anyone here from the audience to speak on this petition. If you can come forward and just sign in, state your name and address for the record.
What is the 1150? What is the address of that, 1150?
No, it's your address you're putting down.
No, but it says regarding the address.
Oh.
Right. Good evening. My name is Rob Schwartz. I live at 49 Treebrook Court, which is one of the 7 properties behind this property. We were here several years ago for several months trying to voice our concern about this property. Unfortunately, it has now gone forward, so we've learned to live with it. I'm here this evening to implore the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals to unanimously reject the request by Bliss Construction for an area variance to extend a proposed awning on the south side of the senior housing development at 1055 Youngs Road from 30 feet from the property line, which is the fence, to 19 feet. I'm respectfully asking you to reject this request for a variance for 2 reasons. Although it is stated in their response to question number 4 in their area variance application that the extension of the awning will have, quote, no adverse impact on traffic, noise, odor, or other environmental conditions, I believe that it will, in fact, further impact the visual character of the neighborhood backyards of all of the property owners on Treebrook Court, which is adjacent to this proposed area. I've lived on Treebrook Court since 1993, and up until 2 years ago, there were hundreds of trees directly behind our property. Many of those trees could have provided some of the shading for these residents living at 1055, by the way. Now there is a huge 2-story white building that I have to look at every day when I look out my window or sit out on my deck. And while I know there is nothing I can do to go back in time, eliminate this building, and bring back all the trees that were behind our backyard, I'm hoping that we can minimize any further negative impact in our neighborhood, the residents of Treebrook Court. My second reason has to actually do with Mr. Bliss's lack of adherence to the town ordinances. And I'm not sure if the members of this board know that in 2021, I know that, Dan, you know, because I've had correspondence with you. When that fence between 1055 Youngs Road and the properties on Treebrook Court was installed, I know for a fact that that was not inadvertent, because I went out in the morning when the fence company was there, and the people that were installing the fence said to me specifically, I'm very sorry that it's being installed this way. This was at the order of the property owner. So he ignored the town ordinance, section 724A6, and advised the contractor to install the fence with the unfinished side facing our backyards. We had a meeting with Mr. Bliss, myself, and other neighbors, and we asked Mr. Bliss about that, and if it was possible to put the correct side on the side of our neighborhood, and he specifically responded, I don't want my residents to have to see that. And we said, well, we all have to see that. And he said there was no way that he was able to change that. It took several emails to the planning department, phone calls, emails to Mr. Ulikowski, and eventually there was a letter that went out to Mr. Bliss and to his attorney saying that that had to be changed. And in fact, as I understand it, that occupancy could not occur until that was changed. I've understood also that occupancy actually did take place before that was changed. And then we were told that there was going to be a delay in, that it will be corrected, but there will be a delay because of supply chain issues. We don't know what that was related to because finally it was changed and there were no new supplies. All the contractors did was change the fence to the other side, eventually, several months later. So my point in bringing this to your attention is that I'm very concerned that Mr. Bliss seems to have a history of being unable to follow the required town ordinances and either ignores them or requests for yet another waiver. So in closing, I'm hoping you will have a more accurate perspective from the other residents on the other side residing on Treebrook Court and will require Bliss Construction to adhere to Section 552B of the zoning code. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what number house were you?
We are 49, so we are not directly behind that, but we're 49. So although there is a 6-foot fence, that is true, but we see from our window, when we're on our second floor, we can see above this. We have no idea what this awning is going to look like, and it will just look like another commercial property there. So we're just trying to maintain, we've accepted the fact that we no longer have the trees in our backyard, but we like to maintain it like that. And we know that they have umbrellas out there. We could see the umbrellas over that fence. So I'm not sure, and if they want to have an awning, at least follow the ordinances. I mean, there are ordinances that all of us have to follow as residents, private residents, and I'm not sure why we have to always waive it in the favor of the developers. Did you want to speak?
I'm Estelle Brickner, Rob Schwartz's wife. I live at 49 Treebrook as well. I support everything he said, and I just wanted to reinforce that dealing with Mr. Bliss throughout this whole process has been very frustrating and cause for mistrust. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've come out to speak against this tonight. When Mr. Hopkins said that the fence was inadvertently put in and then they had to correct it, as my husband Rob said, it was not inadvertent. He knew what he was doing and he resisted doing it the correct way until the planning department enforced the regulation. And this has been a very emotional experience for us to all of a sudden one day not have all those trees. When I go out on my deck now, I turn my back to the corner so I can at least see those trees. And because most of you were not here when we fought this project, I just wanted to let you know that initially this 5.5 acre property was supposedly designated as wetlands, and eventually, after all our neighbors fought and we brought experts in and tried to prove that based on the soil, based on some of the animals and the types of animals that were living there, it was wetlands. The Army Corps of Engineers came up with half the property is wetlands. That's where all the trees are, and the other half is not, which absolutely makes no sense. So this whole project has been very disturbing. We don't even know if someday when we go to sell, if it's going to affect the value of our property either, which is a concern, but just urge you to enforce the ordinance regulation for the for the awning.
Are you saying that all those trees we see up there in the back of your property are not there anymore?
Yes, that was all wooded, that whole
No,
five.
I'm sorry, right there where he's pointing.
Oh, no, where the building is was all trees.
Okay, but you still have those trees that are right there.
We have a few trees in our backyard. That's not the issue. There are 7 houses all back there. There were over 500 trees that were taken down behind us. We had green space behind us when we bought our house in 1993. That is no longer there. We've accepted that.
Right.
Emotionally.
Well, he's accepted.
Yeah, but so that's not the issue. We know we can't fight that. It is what it is.
I understand.
I was just trying to give you a
What's
history.
next?
I understand. But okay, we're getting a little out of order though, I'm sorry, because you did finish it. We have to maintain some order here.
No, I mean, I just wanted to give you the perspective of the history and
I
what.
get it, and I appreciate it, and thank you. That does help us with the background. Unfortunately, we're not here to relitigate the
No, I
entire
know, that's
project.
why
We're talking about just the awning.
Yes.
So.
Yes, and initially I wasn't even going to speak but when I heard Mr. Hopkins say the fence was inadvertently put in. First of all, I don't know why that was even stated in his presentation, because it has nothing to do with the awning. But I wanted you to know that, again, that was not correct.
Okay. So, does anyone else have questions for the neighbor?
I do. So the trees that the chairwoman was just asking you about, some of those are clearly above your roof line. So what I'm going to ask you very directly is, your husband has made a statement that he is going to visually see this awning from your second floor, and I'm not entirely convinced that that's accurate given the density of the trees that you
Well,
have
we
back there.
probably
So
should have
what
brought
What I'm going
pictures.
to ask you is, what is your legitimate sight line out of your second floor windows to there? And what are you going to see? Because I'm sensing that it's just the concept of the awning that is really the issue.
That somehow those trees make it look like it's more dense. We can clearly see from the second floor, plus also from our deck, clearly see the top half of the building. And we can see people out on their porches, and we can see the tops of the blue umbrellas when they're opened on the patio.
My understanding is that at its highest point, understanding that this would be sloped, would be 10 to 11 feet. So it's not going to extend up the 2 stories. So if you're telling me your sight line is to the second story, then you shouldn't see this at all.
No.
Over the fence is what we can see. And yes, it does. So the awning is going to be lower than the fence. Is that what you're saying? The fence is 6 feet.
Yes.
We're just saying that we can see over there, we can see where that little patio is. I can't see at the, over it to see the floor of the patio, but we can clearly see because there is a dining area there, because we could see where their kitchen is, where there's a vent that comes out. We could see that from our home, definitely.
Right.
I should have brought pictures, because those trees make it look like it's much.
We don't have the same.
Well, I mean, you're still gonna see the building. The building's not moving.
Right.
You're gonna still see something. I guess maybe you need to think of it from a different lens, is now you're gonna have this whole awning covering all the people milling about and the dining and whatever, so maybe it'll be less distracting, because you're not gonna see anything but the awning.
No, well, you know what? I brought up the 2 issues. One issue was the fact that there's gonna be yet another structure added to the structure there.
Closer to our property.
That's closer. The second issue is that, why does it have to be closer? There's a town ordinance, follow the town ordinance. Why does it need to be all the way up to the property line?
Okay,
If it says that it has to be 30 feet away from the property line.
Why don't we give
let it
Mr.
be-
Hopkins a chance to respond to some of the things that you just brought up, because he may be able to answer some of these questions.
What did you say? Okay, yeah, first of all, obviously, the neighbors who spoke, they've been involved right from the get-go, going back a decade on this project. And I think a lot of their comments deal with some frustration in terms of the project history, and ultimately that the project got built there. And I understand that. Keep in mind, it was zoned CF since 1976. Every single homeowner, when they bought their properties there, knew of that or could have easily known of that. With that being said, the approvals that were previously granted by the ZBA and the planning board were upheld by the Supreme Court. Actually, Joanne Schultz was the attorney who handled it for the town. So that's all beyond us. What we're only here for this evening is literally the seasonal covered awning. And I want to make several points. Number one, it's not on the property line. It's set back 20 feet. You can see that entire length of the bigger portion of the building is 57.2 feet. That entire building could have been 30 feet from the property line. It's not, it never will be. But of course, there was an acknowledgement that there was residential properties on the north side of Treebrook. There is extensive landscaping there. The fence is actually 8 feet, not 6 feet, so it's a pretty tall fence. I just don't see how this awning behind an 8-foot fence is going to cause any concerns. The other thing I want to note for the record, and this is very important, number one, how did the fence get put in the wrong direction? Has nothing to do with why we're here. Before it was installed, Paul asked his professional fence contractor if he had the option of which way it could be installed. And he said, yes, you do. So it was installed the way it was. Obviously, there was no reason to do that if he knew it was incorrect. He had to literally pay to have the fence turned around. That's very expensive. Number two, this point that, hey, you know, they should comply with the code. As you know, that's the very purpose of this board, is to evaluate whether there's justification for requested relief. Strict application of each and every single provision of the zoning code does not make sense. That's just the nature of reality. So I think with all that being said, and putting the history of this entire project behind us, I think there's ample justification for the grant of requested relief. I also want to note for the record that way back then, 2013, 2014, one of the claims that was made again and again was that this was going to be senior housing for those that are destitute, senior housing for drug addicts, senior housing for people that have nowhere else to go. This is a very upscale project, primarily targeted towards affluent individuals residing in Amherst that no longer can stay in their house or their house is too big, but are still capable of living independently. So it's been very, very well received. I do want to make it clear, Rob and his wife did not make those allegations. They've at all times been very professional. So with all that being said, I would ask you to grant the requested relief. If there's any questions about the actual area variance or the lengthy history of this project to a large degree which predates Mr. Bliss's involvement, of course, I would welcome the opportunity to address them. Thank you.
Ron has a question.
Mr. Hopkins, I have one question. You said initially this was not a permanent structure, it was removable, or I didn't quite follow. Tell me about the awning itself.
I'm going to defer to Dan and Tom. It's viewed as being a structure because there's a frame there, but the cover comes off seasonally.
Frame stays on at all times.
Yeah, and it actually, strangely enough, under the fire code, it has to be detached from the building. Otherwise, you'd have to put a sprinkler system within the awning. I know that sounds strange, but so it's a detached awning. The frame will stay year-round. The actual awning, the fabric will be removed during inclement weather.
Well, not that, you mean it'll be removed probably in the fall.
Yeah, fall probably.
Through the winter.
Yeah.
And
fall,
then
yeah.
back.
Right. Yeah, you pay a company. Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
6 months, something.
Yeah, you see a lot of houses have that same type of service.
So it's not gonna be covered all the time.
Right. And it really is. This is not something, this is literally something where the residents that reside in this facility have asked for this particular amenity. Yeah, it's better than sitting under an umbrella or sitting in the sun.
If the board had concerns, you could put a limitation that there be no other enclosing elements on it. I'm sure everyone has been to outdoor restaurants where they have awnings and they extend the season by enclosing them with canvas fabric around the sides with windows, so that's something that is a reasonable
That's fine.
condition.
It's 100% seasonal.
I imagine the purpose of this is because it gets sunny and there's elderly residents,
Right.
and we don't want them to.
Who want to congregate
burned.
outside.
Okay,
It's simply, that's it.
okay. Do we have any other questions from the board? Is there anybody else from the audience to speak on this? Seeing no one else come forward, we'll close the public hearing at this time. We've discussed it extensively. Do we have any motions from anyone on the board?
Move to approve.
Any conditions?
No conditions.
Okay.
I'm satisfied.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded. Do we have any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, the request is granted 5-0.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
Okay, next up is item number 7, 3800 Sheridan Drive. Anyone here from 3800 Sheridan Drive? Okay, well, we'll go to item number 8, 689. Oh, wait, sorry. No, maybe not. Okay, we'll go to item number 8, 689 Paradise Road.
Hi, how are you? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm Nicole Tadana. I work with my sister, who is the current entity LLC owner of 689 Paradise. We submitted an application for a variance regarding subdividing the lot, which currently would not meet the minimum frontage requirements for 2 lots. We've done some extensive work on this current property that was in rather a state of disrepair after a fire. We've worked closely with the building department on this. Essentially, what we are asking for is the purpose of this board is to subdivide this lot, to remove the pool, take down the trees that fell during the blizzard, and either subdivide it vertically on Paradise to have the current house next to a new house with a maximum width of probably 25 to 30 feet, or to subdivide it horizontally, which we've seen a few similar properties on Paradise, specifically 620, 622, and 624, which appear to be single townhomes that have that horizontal access. There's a current partial blacktop driveway that would allow for that horizontal positioning in lieu of vertically to Paradise. After reviewing some of the conditions that would be necessary, we've come up with the following: that this would not create any kind of undesirable change. Obviously, that's going to be subjective to the individuals and the property owners that speak after me, which we do appreciate the concerns of any neighboring property when, you know, somebody is proposing something that's different. I myself reside at 111 Snowberry off a new road. Stream Song subdevelopment went in behind me. I spoke in favor of it. These things, you know, it's progress, it's adding to the population, adding to, you know, the community. So I am sensitive to that. I understand the concerns that any property owner near us might have. We don't feel like it would be an undesirable change. We don't feel like it would be a detriment to neighboring properties. Again, that could be subjective, no adverse effect on environmental conditions or the creation of an unsafe living environment. If anything, we feel this proposal would augment the current residential landscape of Paradise while preserving the integrity of the neighborhood as it stands right now. We've looked at some property plans, as I said, that would give us a more narrow front to the house, deeper house, moving backwards, again, with either of those proposals of either aligning them vertically or using the partial driveway to align one horizontally behind the current structure.
Okay.
Okay?
Does anyone have questions from the board?
I do.
I do. I have a lot of issues with this one. Go ahead, Ron.
I was intrigued by the horizontal subdivision. Would that create a problem in terms of same thing?
Have frontage, right?
Yeah.
No frontage, so it's still okay.
Right.
That's in
I just found that kind of intriguing. Okay, sorry.
That's fine.
What is Via Savoya?
It's an LLC that my sister owns. We've taken a few properties that needed to be rehabbed and restored, and we've essentially flipped them, made them better than they were.
Okay, so what's the intention? First of all, I'm just going to let you know, I had a real issue with the lack of transparency on this petition.
Okay.
Your sister petitioned as an individual.
Okay.
Not on behalf of a corporate entity, and there is absolutely nothing in this petition that speaks to a corporate entity owning this property, which is, they are the actual owner.
Okay.
Your sister is
She's-
not here to
right.
answer questions. What is her role in this company? So I find a real distressing lack of transparency with this application. The
Unfortunately,
second
yeah.
question, no, the real question I have for you, though, is you want to subdivide this parcel, you're here before this board, you're not telling us how you're going to do it, maybe this way, maybe that way. You want to put a house on one, what are you doing with the other one?
Well, that's what we're asking, if it is possible with this particular property. We had talked with Tim before about this, whether or not this is possible to do in a way that does preserve the integrity of the neighborhood. It's not a, you know, we're trying to figure out if there's a way to do it because it's a 1 acre lot, essentially. And we've looked at just some similar situations on Paradise like that. So it is a question. I'm assuming that's why you do come to these kinds of hearings to see if this is something that's feasible, that goes along with the current construct of this street. And my sister did have a seminar. Unfortunately, this was the date before so you know, I'm speaking on her behalf.
But you're talking about putting a house on one parcel. What is the intention with the other parcel? Is it to sell it? Is it to be back in front of us to construct another residence?
To construct another residence.
So really, we're talking about splitting this parcel. You haven't decided which way.
'Cause we're
and
not
you wanna
sure,
put
right.
two residences on, because.
Well, no, there's a current one. The current one is there. We are
Okay, so you
rehabbing
wanna
that, just
construct the
one,
other
yeah.
one. All right,
Mhm.
okay.
So that, we were just trying to figure out a way, if it could be done, whether vertically was a way that could be done based on current zoning codes and whatnot, horizontally, or obviously not. You know what I'm saying? This is not, we're coming to you to see if this is feasible, given that depth of the lot. It's an acre lot.
Okay.
Hold on, if you're
Oh.
gonna talk, you gotta come forward, sign in, state your name and address for the record.
Sorry, Mario Rodriguez with Via Savoya. My wife
Can you
owns the
sign in?
company. Yep.
Thanks.
So the current structure at 689, we are currently in the process of revamping the entire structure. The fire was extensive, the damage was extensive. We had gutted the property down to the studs. We are currently working with the building department and inspectors to go through all aspects of renovations. That includes rehabbing the entire property. We made it, it was originally a 3-bedroom. We're making that a 4-bedroom with a 2.5 bath. So we have no intentions of removing the property, eliminating that property at 689. We're rehabbing it to make it the most, probably some of the most beautiful properties around in that neighborhood in comparison if you do the comps. So we're keeping that property just because of the parcel and the land and how big it is. The question and ask was, can we subdivide this property out? If you have the frontage facing forward, do we have that opportunity? And again, obviously council's here. Or if we turn it horizontal as to 622, 620, and 624 Paradise, which are all townhomes that are all pushed back into the property. We have no intentions of doing that. It's just context-wise, we wanted to share that with the board so that the understanding was there.
Yeah, whether or not it's feasible to even do something like this.
I don't even think we're at that inquiry, at least for me. I don't even think they're standing to be here right now.
Okay, does anyone else have questions?
Can I ask, in rebuttal to that, what can we provide to you in that
Barbara Cristiano,
context?
the petitioner, is listed as the property owner. She is not the property owner.
Well, her LLC owns it. She's the owner of the LLC.
Ron, did you have questions?
No.
If that's a problem, I mean, I'm sure that could be rectified.
Okay, so you're flipping the current house?
We're renovating it.
We're
keeping
renovating
that property. We're
So
not,
who's gonna live there, Barbara?
no, we're gonna probably rent that out.
Okay, so it's gonna be a rental. So then what's the anticipated use of the second property if we're to grant the request? You're gonna rent that as
Same
well?
Single-family home
Yeah.
to rent, possibly sell, it would depend.
Okay. Anyone else have questions from the board? Okay, do we have people from the audience to speak on this petition? Okay, if you can all just state your name, sign in, and say your address as well for the record.
Now, but actually, I signed in the beginning. I wasn't sure how this worked.
That's fine.
Okay, so we're signed in. I'm Peter, and this is my wife Pam. We live at 685, which is the actual right-hand side. So the way you see that,
Hang on, we'll pull it up.
Can we have your last name for the record, please?
Arnoldo, Arnoldo. Okay, so we're this one with the red car and the pool. So we're right against it, and we have the exact same size lot. So we'll be brief. We've lived in the house since 1984. Spacing of the houses on our block was appealing as we moved from the city. We used to live in the city, and we thought it was great out here. We loved it. The area is amazing. The street is established, and each house is unique. Well, it should be, because this is paradise, right? We were totally against the zoning change, completely against this. Dividing the lot to squeeze another house on the new parcel would be detrimental to the aesthetic of the immediate neighborhood, whether it be built in a straight line or twisted or put in the back, or however you do it, is just you're jamming another house in there, which doesn't make sense. Now, I know that when someone tries to turn over a house, they hope to make as much profit as possible, and that's fine. That's what it's all about, and more power to them. But because the buyer may have underestimated the scope and the cost of what this project is, this is just not the right thing to do. Splitting it up, this is wrong. This is just not.
Interject here. Yes, they're working on the house. It's smaller than our house, and our house is 1,800 square foot, so I don't know how they're doing the 4-bedroom, making this mansion out of this kind of a house.
outbuilding that you see, like garage, and there's a little shed, they're all decrepit, and these will come in, it's, go ahead.
I mean, to me, it just doesn't seem fair to that all the neighbors surrounding this property are gonna be negatively impacted by this decision because it's a result of the buyers' poor planning. They got into more than they really can handle.
Sir, can I ask you,
yes.
do you know where roughly, like, in maybe using the tree line in between the two properties is a guideline? Where's your property line run?
Pretty much the
You can
tree.
see a fence,
Can
there's
you
the
see
back,
the
the right
fence?
back corner, and then you can see, yeah, that's fence right there.
That fence is probably about 2 inches on our side of the line.
Thank you.
So it's really, the lot is pretty much exactly the same size, both lots.
And the other thing that they mentioned, see where there's like a little driveway, it's no way a paved driveway, there's some stone there, and that's where the younger son parked his car.
That's where the
It's
younger
not a
kid parked
driveway
his
access
truck.
at
That
all.
is no way that's a drive. The driveway, yes, you can see it's just
It's not a
ruts.
driveway
It was tire ruts. I mean, at the beginning, we were very pleased that the house turned over after the fire in the sale to Barbara and Nicole, because they clearly had good intentions to do something with this, because the property has been in disrepair probably for the last 20 years. And we were really looking forward to, wow, they're really gonna do something great with this, they're really gonna do something amazing. But to sell the lot between and jam another house in there, to me, just doesn't make sense.
It would be horrible,
We-
it would be horrific.
We were looking to see one nice house, clean it up and do what you need to do, not two jammed in there.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this?
Madam Chair, Board. My name is William Prenovu. I live at 254 Shady Grove. And if you look at the map there, that's my house right there with the driveway. My driveway, the front side, backs up to the property. I've been there about 42, 43 years. The original family there took care of that property in the back and always kept the grass cut, things like that, had a garden in the back. Both of them died. Their daughter took over the property, and they had the fire a year ago, Christmas, pretty much destroyed the house. My concern is that if they put another house there, now I understand they said they're gonna rent the houses. If they put another house there, what are they gonna do with the property that abuts my property at the right end there? Are they gonna maintain it? Right now, the grass is a foot and a half high. They tried cutting it today, they can't, it's so damn high and wet back there. It's just a mess. So my concern again is putting a second house there isn't gonna help the situation. If they're renters, you know, then I imagine they'll be maintained by the landlords. If not, individual people buy the houses. Will one of them want to put a fence behind their property, not another one not? How will that look from my house and that? As far as Paradise Road, it won't fit the ambience of Paradise Road. Majority of the houses are older homes that sit on large lots. There's a very few new houses that have gone in there. It just won't match the rest of the homes down Paradise Road. It's a very unique neighborhood there. And it sits across from Paradise Park also, which is a beautiful Amherst Park. So that's why I am opposed to shrinking those lots and sticking another house in there. You don't know what you're gonna get, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Blockos. I live at 262 Shady Grove Drive. You can see the 262 on the roof there, yep. So my concern is the same thing, property values going down. That yard is very wet. As like you said, they can't mow. Rainy season time, you're not in the backyard for a while, especially along the property line. Floods out, you can kind of see that darker area between the trees just to above the garage and stuff. I don't think they're very forthcoming. They've had this house for a while now. They put new windows in. Like I said, they might be working on it, but they're not doing anything else. That tree is falling down. That pool is collapsing. When the filter, not filter, but the cover blew off of it, the pool liner blew all through everyone's neighborhood, on my yard, everyone's yard there. So the house is not being maintained. I don't see how they're going to put a 4-bedroom, as my neighbors say, in there. The houses they mentioned further up on Paradise Road were $600,000+ houses. That is not a $600,000 house, nor will it be unless they plan on knocking it down and building something a little larger. So I'm concerned about property values. I'm concerned about extra flooding in the back. That little garden area right there it's a homemade fence that is all overgrown, and like I said, they haven't done anything really to prove credibility that they're going to be good neighbors, or they haven't been good neighbors yet. And to say that they're gonna do all this work, they haven't yet. They put new windows in the house, and they did gut the inside, but it kind of ends there. Nothing's happened outside, and it's just, it's an eyesore right now, I'll be quite honest with you. So I don't see how it's going to get better, as they mentioned. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Alexei Marchuk. I'm the resident of 691 Paradise Road. That's the house with the brown roof there. First and foremost, the owners that lived there prior to the burn, there was always a concern for noise, which their current driveway is about 20 feet away, and even at 20 feet away, if someone talking normally, you could hear them on the inside of the house. And then second, we already know that there was a major fire. Sticking another house in there doesn't make sense, because luckily with the setbacks and the minimum lot sizes, the fire didn't spread with other houses. But if you stick another house right in between that, you're opening up the concern of the fire spreading. And then secondly, I believe they closed on the house December 22nd, the 29th, I believe. It's been six months. Not much has been done with the property, which brings up the question, is it ever going to get done?
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience to speak on this? Okay, seeing no one else come forward, we're gonna close the public hearing. You can come up and respond to what they've said briefly.
Just in regards to, being good neighbors and whatnot, I do appreciate all the concerns. You've been very gracious to us, letting us use your electricity. The house was in a complete, absolute state of disrepair. The outbuildings are, and this has been a lengthier process than we thought it was going to be. Fire damage is a completely different beast. We have been working very closely with the building department, plumbing inspectors, everything to code, but it is a much lengthier process. So while I do apologize that the process has been lengthier, we are trying to do everything perfectly and right according to code. And these are things that do come up. In regards to outside, yes, the blizzard came shortly after we did acquire the house. The trees went down. Our concentration for right now has been the inside. We've replaced the windows. That part of it, it's just a different timeline when you're dealing with houses like this. So I do appreciate the concern. We are doing everything absolutely to code. The inspectors have been out several times. Anytime there's an issue, we correct it. This was a question, is it feasible? Is this something that is responsible to do? If it wasn't, obviously that's why we're bringing it to you. There's no assumption here. It's a question. Is this something feasible, responsible, and goes with the scope of what the guidelines are? If it's not, it's not. But this is something that we're bringing forth to you. That's pretty much it. So I do appreciate the concerns, and we are, we wouldn't be allowed to continue construction if we weren't doing everything to code and going along with the inspectors in Amherst. So rest assured, we are trying to do that. And so far as the grass, they couldn't get back there because it was so wet. So that is something, that we are trying to deal with. But when it is too wet, you can't send landscaping guys back there. So we are trying to work on all of those problems, and we are trying to be responsible and ethical and moral in doing it. So just wanted to rest assure you on that, regardless of what the outcome of this is. Okay? Yep.
Okay. Do we have any discussion as a board or any motions?
I just don't think it's appropriate to split that parcel into two. It seems like good owners are trying to do the right thing on rehabbing the property, but I don't think their plan makes sense.
So are you moving to deny?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Do we have any opposition to the motion to deny the request? Okay. Hearing no opposition, the request is denied, 5-0.
Would you mind just going through the,
And we will go through the balancing test. Mr. Bray?
Every meeting.
You made the motion.
Whether undesirable change will be producing character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. Yes, it will. It'll be not in fit with the
sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. No, there is not. There's no other way to do what they want to do other than splitting the parcel into two. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, yes, it is. It is creating an entirely different property, entirely new property, and neither property would be in compliance with the code. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical and environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district, yes, it will. And whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna circle back to item number 7 on the agenda. Is there anyone here from 3800 Sheridan Drive? Perhaps we'll adjourn it till next month. I will move to adjourn. Second, anyone? Any opposition? Hearing none, we'll adjourn that till next month. Any motion to close the hearing? Anyone?
Move to close.
All right, no opposition. Meeting adjourned.
And